Today we'll discuss the lockdown protests that turned violent in southern China, allegedly after a pregnant woman died. Welcome to State of Politics. I'm David Zhang. Before we start today's video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below what you would like to see covered next. Thousands are on the street to protest against China's zero-COVID lockdown orders. Since Monday, the people in Guangzhou have escaped a compulsory lockdown and clashed with police, as anger at strict coronavirus curbs boiled over. Guangzhou is 2 hours north of Hong Kong, and it's a city of business, market economy, and the start of China's once opening up era back in the 80s. And while Chinese leader Xi Jinping is enjoying his time in Bali for the G20 summit, back home, the people are angry. Some have decided to take down the COVID testing center in Guangzhou, while others took to the street to take down red barricades designed to facilitate and to have citizen control. All the while, authorities want the city to look like this. Just empty, sad, and, well, I guess free from COVID. Riot police have been dispatched and will likely end up with many arrested. And videos show teams of 20 plus riot police dispatched wearing white overalls and bulletproof vests. You gotta protect yourself also while you're beating other people up. And the aftermath of the protests this week showed a clearly angry citizen class against the COVID authorities. In China, the authority comes directly from the central government and all the way up to Chinese leader Xi Jinping, who has been making zero COVID the top priority of his domestic agenda. For the last 3 years, it is the policy that has helped Xi Jinping consolidate control inside China. Today, People's Daily, which is a Chinese state media, published an opinion piece, which is often basically written under the direction of the propaganda authority anyways. That piece is titled, "Unswervingly Implement the General Policy of Dynamic Clearing." Dynamic clearing refers to zero COVID. This is Beijing's message to the people in southern China, and the final outcome of the protest will just be the suffering of the people, because zero COVID will continue. Every time we talk about China's continued lockdowns, we arrive at the same question. Why is China still doing this? Some suggest it is for control. Others say that health is serious for the CCP. Yet every time, what we hear in the news is rather the humanitarian crisis it creates time and time again. This time, another tragedy. In Guangzhou, southern China's industrial metropolis and a city of 20 million people, at least 3 districts are under stay-at-home orders. 13 million people are being locked inside. And since early November, the Guangzhou authorities have been converting a large venue for conventions into a quarantine center. Now the center is overfilled and people are fighting over supply and food inside the arena. And those released from quarantine find themselves homeless, as their community is still under lockdown, and they cannot return. Outside the quarantine center, there have been rumors circulating online that the trigger point for this so-called violent protest going around the city, it is because a pregnant woman in labor died after authorities stopped her from leaving her home. The Haizhu district area, which is home to many poor traveling laborers, they have been complained of not being paid if they're unable to return to work. And of course, there's food shortages and the skyrocketing prices while living under COVID control measures. And the bigger context here is that whenever there is a lockdown or a partial stay-home order, that entire area will essentially halt to a complete stop. And people aren't likely to work from home if they do physical labor by the hour. Plus, wages are already low in these type of jobs. Staying home really just means that spending double the amount of money for nothing. Since November 10th, for several nights in a row, there's been tussling with the white-clad COVID prevention enforcement officials, or white-garb COVID guards, as we like to call them. And on Monday, that anger suddenly exploded into the streets of Guangzhou with a mass act of defiance, including pushing over police cars and breaking down the red COVID barriers. There's also been stories spreading online that the testing companies are faking COVID results to artificially boost the number of infections in order to make more money. More tests, more cash. And another source allegedly says that authorities had promised the people staying home that grocery was free, but by the time it was actually delivered to the people, they had to pay. And in some cases, to get groceries, you need these little tickets like food stamps. While it is impossible to confirm any of this, essentially what we don't know in China is a whole lot, as really truly authentic on the internet, all the rumors indicate one thing in common. Societal pressure in China has reached an all-time high, enough to trigger protest and clashes with authorities. Especially in southern China, where working class people in manufacturing, trade, business, and industrial production have been told to halt their work, to go home and just stay caged in. Videos of the chaos have sparked discussion online as to why the Chinese regime continues to lock people inside. And like us, you and I, we're all troubled by the lack of common sense in the CCP. And the more I see China, the more I realize there's this counter-logic mindset the Chinese officials have. Like, their decision-making defines what we know is comprehension of reality or common sense. But in their mind, having a massive lockdown is the only way to maintain stability in the regime. And in fact, the tragedy of a pregnant woman denied hospital access is not the first to have been reported this year. Back in January of this year, when Xi'an, a city of 13 million people, was under lockdown, a pregnant woman lost her baby outside the hospital, just steps after the authorities denied her access to the medical care she needed, right in front of the hospital steps. And when Shanghai was under lockdown for 2 months, we heard stories of starvation, sometimes even to the point of death. And that was a real thing in 2022 in China. It really suggests that Chinese authorities here do not value individual lives as ones to cherish, as long as local officials can carry out the directions from Beijing and get their fair share of reward. And by the way, China's #2 official right now under Xi Jinping got a big promotion when he followed through with the order to lock down Shanghai for the 2 months. And then he got a rank-breaking promotion to become the new premier of the CCP. In other words, he basically followed the orders of Xi Jinping and he got promoted. As you can see, all the other officials are going to follow suit. The more you can oppress your people in China, it seems, the higher you can climb the ladder to power. Still, local governments across China are struggling to maintain a zero-COVID approach, without trashing their economies anyways. The latest official factory output and retail sales figures show the crushing impact of the pandemic and the government's policy response to it. Guangzhou, a city where people are protesting, was the beginning of the once China's reform and opening up era. Former leader Deng Xiaoping went to Guangzhou as a part of his 90s tour in the south. And the common denominator of which the Deng Xiaoping tour was really calling for was for an immediate, rapid acceleration of reform and opening up. Right? Market economy. And the southern cities had been at the forefront of China's economic boom. Now the opposite is true. China is further consolidating and concentrating on the central planning idea, and with Xi Jinping's tight grip on power, it essentially means that the days of opening up are over. And this might actually explain why the authorities don't care, at least on the surface, about the damage of zero COVID on China's economy, right? It's very unlikely to recover in the short term if Xi Jinping doesn't end the zero COVID measures as a national mandate. Does it matter to Xi Jinping and his loyalists, though? Well, not really as we see it. As long as people are kept under strict control, protests, they're just a minor scratch, not a gaping wound. Or at least from their perspective, it is not. And here's the irony in my view. Zero COVID was never effective, especially given the fact that there are no provinces at all which have reported zero cases in recent days, meaning that zero COVID was never really about getting that number zero. It wasn't about curbing the virus. It was strictly about harming a group of people for the benefit of the ruling class. Around 20 million people in the heart of Western China's megacity of Chongqing have been placed under a type of lockdown being referred, ironically, by the people there as, quote, voluntary static management. Now, this is because, though there has been no official announcement, they've been told to remain indoors by community officials. It's like they've been trained to just automatically perform this lockdown measure without ever actually needing direction from the central government in Beijing. I'm beginning to form a different hypothesis on what this all means. So basically, under the Communist Party's rules, there are two classes of people. One where you can bend reality to your liking as long as you have control. and the other class is the victims of your reality warping policies. This ultimately comes down to the staunch following of Marxism inside the CCP. I think Karl Marx truly believed that Darwin's theory of evolution can be applied to humans. His impact on the CCP has been that if we hear Xi Jinping in his speeches carefully, he says the ability of the party to self-revolutionize, in other words, to evolve from the revolution. Xi basically told us about the self-revolution in his recent 20th Party Congress speech. He is now solidly in control of the future of the Communist Party, and he has told us that the way for the Chinese people to go forward, to evolve, is the self-revolution, and the sense that the self, as in the people of China, of course, must weed out those who do not listen to the CCP carefully, and those that oppose the ruling of the CCP, well, and those that seek freedom and liberty individually, they're the people that we have to change, and we have to evolve from them. The CCP is in this constant struggle against the people, and zero COVID seems to be the perfect tool against a massive population to dull out their desire for essentially anything but communism. And that's it for today's State of Politics. I'm David Zhang, and thanks so much for watching today. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below what you'd like to see covered next. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.